Okay.
Good evening, council, staff, and those that are watching us on our YouTube channel. This electronic meeting agenda is available on the town's website at greaternapanee.com and is being streamed to the public on the town's YouTube channel. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, Council's Rules of Procedure, Bylaw, and Code of Conduct and other pertinent legislation apply to these electronic proceedings as if they were in person. The mayor will do a roll call of members of council, as well as the clerk will do a statement of the members of town council who are participating. If any member of council's connection to the meeting is interrupted, then the mayor will call a recess of the meeting until the member can reconnect either by internet or telephone. If the member is not able to reconnect within 5 minutes, then the meeting will resume. Councillor Johnson, Ward 5.
Pending, thank you.
Councillor McCormack, Ward 1.
Present.
Councillor Norrie, Ward 4.
Present.
Councillor Pennell, Ward 3.
Present.
Councillor Richardson, Ward 2.
Ward 2 present.
Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Present.
And the mayor obviously is present as well. Madam Clerk, if you could read the staff members who are joining us this evening, please.
We have Raymond Callery, CAO. We have Rob Serson, who's General Manager of Emergency Services Fire Chief. We have Paul Dober, who's the General Manager of Financial Services and the Treasurer. Michael Nopes, who's the Director of Development Services. And Brianna Clement, who's the Communications Coordinator, and myself, Clerk.
Thank you. I'll call the meeting to order. I need an adoption of the agenda. We are going to have one amendment, and that is to add item number 5.18, statements by members. So an amended, moved by Councillor McCormack, seconded by Councillor Pennell. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Public meeting under the Planning Act. 4.1, convene the public meeting. We have a recommendation that the public meeting under the Planning Act is hereby convened. Susan, do I need a motion for that?
Yes.
Yes, moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Application PLOPMA 2020-007, official plan amendment, and PLZACO 2020-008, zoning bylaw amendment applications. 2868A, County Road A. We will change the wording here to the effect. The official plan amendment would place the subject property into a designation that recognizes the existing use, and the zoning bylaw amendment would apply site-specific areas and frontages to the resulting lots. The environmental protection designation in the official plan and environmental protection zoning will be maintained. The location, the property is located part lot 12, concession 2, geographic township of South Fredericksburg. It is located on the south shore of Hay Bay, approximately 1.5 kilometers west of the intersection of County Roads 8 and 21. It is accessible from private road, County Road 8A, and is municipally recognized as 2868A, County Road 8A. Is there anyone that wants to speak to this? Did we receive any information or any correspondence on this public meeting beforehand, Susan?
Through you, Your Worship, I can jump in.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Sorry.
Staff did not receive any, staff did not receive any requests from members of the public to speak to the applications tonight.
Okay, did we receive anything in writing from people that perhaps didn't want to join the meeting but had questions on it?
Through you, Your Worship, there were no written submissions and no inquiries received via telephone either, actually.
Okay. Do you wish to make any comments on the application itself?
Sure. This application seeks to effectively put back what was. So there used to exist two separate lots. There was an inadvertent merger over time, I believe in the early to mid 1990s, that had gone unnoticed until very recently. So these applications seek to recreate those previous lots. However, due to the current official plan designation and zoning on the properties, these applications that are before council tonight will be required to be passed in order to bring the property into compliance from an official plan and zoning standpoint to allow the consent application to proceed to effectively create the lots. So it's a very technical exercise just to essentially recognize what is already in place. So there are two dwellings that are on this single lot, and the intention is to split them and put back the two lots, each with their own respective dwelling on them.
Okay. Does council have any questions during the public meeting of Michael? Councillor Pennell?
Thank you, through your worship. Michael, I'm just wondering that throughout the time that this, as you say, setback to what was already there, has any, I see some accessory buildings and stuff on the sketch. Are they within the setbacks that, or have they encroached onto the property line that is there? And I would imagine that we're putting the property line right back to where it was before.
Through you, your worship, yes, the small outbuildings appear to encroach. However, the proposal is to place the properties into a site-specific shoreline residential zone, which does permit the reduced side yard setback of 1.2 meters for accessory buildings. So it's likely that they may be placed slightly out of conformity with the bylaw in that sense. So there is a little bit of wiggle room, I guess you could say, that we have with the placement of that line. The intention is to assign a site-specific zone to allow for that line to move ever so slightly if determined that it's needed to move based on the surveyors when they're on site. So they'll be pinning the outbuildings on the property and determining what the setback is to where the property line is, and if it needs to move ever so slightly, then it can do so.
Okay, and just one follow-up with that. Do we know what the intentions are of having this done? Is it remaining in the family? I noticed that it's the brothers. Is it remaining, or is it going to be sold? And the reason why I'm asking, if we know ahead of time if it's going to be sold, will those buildings, although you say that there's some wiggle room, will that cause us any headaches going forward?
To my knowledge, I believe the intention is for both brothers to own their own separate parcel. I could be wrong, but I believe that is the intention. If it is not, and if the properties are intended to be sold, I don't foresee issues personally with the placement of those outbuildings, since we will be able to bring them into conformity with the bylaw based on where that line does land at the end of the day. But yeah, I don't foresee any issues coming to mind at the moment.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any further? Yeah, Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
I'm just reviewing the sketch as included in the agenda package and looking at all of the structures noted. Are there any structures on either of these properties that are concerning as far as what they are and how they're placed and what their use is? Is there anything that could be addressed at this time based on what's there?
I do note that there is what's called a roof covered trailer, and then there appears to be a wooden deck attached to it. I don't know what the actual use of that is, if there are ever guests staying in that. If so, that would not be permitted. However, staff have not been made aware of any issues to that effect. So staff can certainly follow up with the owners and check into that to ensure that there is no there is no habitation of that trailer.
Thank you. That was actually what I didn't lead you to that. I wanted to see if you'd already picked up on it, but that certainly stood out to me as what appeared to be a second dwelling on the parcel to be retained. And I think it's appropriate to at least question. Thank you.
Anything further from council? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the public meeting under the Planning Act. Moved by Councillor McCormack, seconded by Councillor Pennell. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Items for discussion. 5.1, we have a recommendation that council receive and adopt the minutes of the special session of council dated September the 8th as presented. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor Pennell. Comments or questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. The council receive and adopt the minutes of the special session of council dated September the 18th as presented. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. CAO service area updates. Comments or questions for Mr. Cowrie or the specific manager?
Madam Mayor?
I'll go, yes, Mr. Cowrie.
No, I was just going to highlight the one change to the report from previous reports. With the moving of the identification, you'll notice on pages 56 through page 66 of the report, the report now starts with anything that is a major policy decision of council. And these eventually, all of them say September 15th because this is the first time that we've done the report in this format. The idea being is that council can focus their attention right at the beginning of the report on anything that may be upcoming in the future that would require a policy or a policy decision of council or direction of council for staff to proceed. So as we move through, these reports will eventually have, or these items will eventually have fuller reports that are brought forward to council, and it allows council to get an idea of the upcoming things where there are policy things moving forward. The remainder of the report is the same as it has been in the past and is just operational information that council may be interested in, but I just, we felt it was helpful as staff for council to be able to see the policy issues right up at the beginning.
I think we all appreciate that, Ray, that does separate it. It does get to be a very long report, which is fulsome and needed, but you're right. This does kind of draw your attention to the things that we need to work on right away. The rest of the stuff is important as well, but good to highlight it. Questions, comments? Councillor Pennell?
Thank you, Worship. I just have some comments regarding page 64, and it's the Lime Lake Road. So this road has been deteriorating quite badly. It is a hard top surface road. I was out there the other day. I have received very many. I've received many phone calls regarding this for safety concerns. If you drive out the road does have a yellow line down the middle of it. However, the road is very narrow, and it's becoming more narrow as the shoulder is breaking away from it. There is a plan here to pulverize the existing hardtop and bring it back to gravel until something can be done with it in the 2021 season. My suggestion is that we get on this sooner than later. The crews were out doing some cold patch, and we know that that's not going to stay in the ground for very much longer, especially when the rains are coming and the cold weather's coming. So I'd like to see this get done sooner than later. And also maybe there's a 3.75 kilometer stretch here that we're looking at, but I'd like to see this possibly done right from the corner of West Plain Road where it turns into Lime Lake Road, because that road is, if you take a drive back there, it's right full of cold patch holes that were done by the crews the other day. And to be quite frank, this road is lost. It's gone. So it needs to be done right away. Something needs to be done. unfortunately, someone's going to end up getting hurt because the road is windy and it has different elevation changes. And I believe that as people are trying to protect their vehicles and not hit these potholes, which some are pretty deep, I have to admit, and stay away from the shoulder, that they're riding more in the center lanes, and it's going to cause a safety concern. So that's my 2 cents in on that. I'd like to see this project go through faster and with the possibility of adding more kilometers. I think it's only another 2 kilometers, if that, to be added to that. And that's all I have to say about that report. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I may just respond to Councillor Pennell's comments, and possibly Mr. Dauber may want to comment as well. If you take a look at the line item right above that for Oliver Side Road on the bottom of page 63, there is about $45,000 worth of pre-work, I believe, that needs to be done on those projects. It is possible, although there is no budget available right now, we're waiting to, Mr. Cuthel's waiting to see what the underage was possibly on the Water Street project. It is possible for council to reallocate some of that funding, or it would be possible for council to, there was 2 projects that were put off due to COVID. One was the crushing and one was the dock work, to redo the docks in the south. It is possible to push those projects to 2021 and have council pass a resolution to reuse that funding to begin that work if they wish. That might be something for council to consider, or to provide direction to staff to finalize the Water Street, and when those numbers are known, to use anything left from that project to try and advance at least the engineering for this project, for the other 2 projects, if council wished. It's possible Mr. Dauber wants to add something at this point in time on those.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Through you, Madam Mayor, to add on to Mr. Callery's discussion. Yeah, we are trying to find out what kind of savings we have from different capital projects. Unfortunately, we don't have a pot of money to just kind of draw on. We need to look at what projects will be knocked off the list to another year. And sort of take that type of an approach. We will come back with a further update, and that road, at least the continuation of it on, as Mr. Callery said, we could take some of those projects, bump them, and use those funds to get started. And then once we have some good solid numbers, that can be part of the discussions for the 2021 budget to carry that project on to completion.
Okay. Any further? Yeah. I'll go to Councillor Richardson and then Councillor McCormack.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just some really quick comments with respect to strategic planning, servicing industrial land joint review. Do we have such a thing as a 10 or a 20-year plan as to how we're going to develop our industrial lands? And if we don't, is that something that we can sort of work towards with respect to where we're going to go with it? And at what point are we going to have certain industrial lands prepared and ready to be serviced? And what are we not? And I'm assuming that some of these lands are going to be easier to service than others. So do we have, I guess, first of all, do we have a plan, or is it something that we come up with looking forward into the future?
Maybe I could start with that, Madam Mayor, and if any of the other people want to jump in. Councillor Richardson, to your point, yes, we had an original plan, and most of this right now is focused obviously in our major industrial park north of 401, the Richmond Industrial Park. We had a plan that was done a number of years ago, and we had to amend that plan when we did the additional development along the Goodyear Road frontage. So from west of Kimmett Side Road, where there was a couple of new customers that went in, Stinson put a propane filling station in there, and there was a couple of other developments. What had happened, we had to relook at that because the servicing of land up Goodyear Road, trying to go that direction through the rock, is very, very difficult. And because we were basically only every dollar we spent on footage to do that was only servicing one lot, We looked at other opportunities to service in from behind that and service sort of in a north-south direction, if you can kind of see where we're doing that. So there was a secondary plan that was done, and it was basically to try and develop from the top end down. One of the biggest issues with the industrial park north of 401 is we want to ensure that there's enough fire service, fire protection, water protection. So that's the biggest thing that right now the management, all of the different departments of the town are working on to make sure that there's adequate water. The next big step that we're trying to overcome with the new servicing plan is stormwater management, because what we don't want to do as we develop those lots is end up with a number of individual small storm ponds, because the municipality ends up assuming all of those ponds. So we had a master drainage plan that was done there for the original plan, and it needs to be updated as well. But the plan is to develop the entire lot and come back to council with one report on the full servicing of that. The issue is going to become similar to what other municipalities around us did, is does council want to put the money out to service on spec, so service ahead of time, or do we want to try and service as the lots develop or a couple of lots ahead? We don't want to end up with a giant field that we hold for 10 years with all of the money in the ground, but that is the problem right now. And what we're really trying to overcome is what's the best way to get fire protection service adequate for industrial uses, and then how do we get those initial services in? And we're looking at a number of financial options, including local improvements, development charges, all of the different funding sources for that, because it is expensive land to develop simply because there's no soil. You're into rock no matter what you do there. But that does also make it perfect for large industrial, because that's what they're looking for is a solid base to work from. So our plan was to have that this year, and I think that what we're looking for is to have through the budget process in early 2021 to have a plan for council on how we should ultimately develop that, or if we should look at private sector support to try and develop that there's just not enough municipal money to try and to do that project on our own without public-private partnerships.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was hoping to hear that. I just didn't want to hear I was hoping we weren't going to go into some kind of a piecemeal kind of thing, and so I'm happy to hear that there's something moving forward. So,
yeah.
With respect to, sorry.
No, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, with respect to the property standards and the clearance rates, I noticed with there's a large disparity with the clearance rates. In 2019, it was I think it was the property standards one, 96%, and then 2020 60%. Is it the obvious answer because of the COVID, or I just noticed that the zoning is virtually unchanged. In 2019, the clearance rates were 74, and then 76% in 2020. So just wondering about that, just because there's a big disparity in the numbers.
Through your worship, I can address that. So the 2019 numbers are 2019 complaints that have been received by staff and that are being addressed. So complaints that were submitted within the calendar year of 2019 were in the 90% clearance rate with addressing all of those complaints. For the 2020 complaints that have been submitted, we have addressed 60% of those so far. So there's not a quick turnaround time for property standards complaints, but we're definitely working and moving in the right direction with that. So complaints that have been received in 19 are nearly buttoned up, and for 2020 complaints, we're well on our way with having those addressed.
Great, thank you. Huff Lane improvements. Are there plans for parking down in Huff's Lane? I see that we're putting a bunch of time and effort into fixing the road and brushing back the property and stuff. I mean, it is a boat launch, so are there plans to have some kind of a parking, maybe not a facility, but some area that the boaters can, when they put their boats in the water, that they can park there, as opposed to, I'm not sure what the other option is other than parking on County Road 9.
Councilor Richardson, I'm sorry, I don't have the final design plan there, but I can get you that after the meeting and get you some more information on that. I just don't have that in front of me this evening. I'm sorry.
Yeah, nope, that's great. Lastly, I see it with the cannabis operations. I guess it's not concerning, but I read that it says all other operations cease. And what is the cost recovery? that we come up with some kind of plan with respect to, I know these grows are a thorn in our sides, and they've been a thorn in our sides prior to them being legalized, but we're probably spending a lot of money assisting the OPP in eradicating these things. And what plan or what options do we have? And I know it's probably still open for discussion, but what options do we have to recoup, do some of the cost recovery with these things? Is it something that we can build back to the property owners, or can we bill the OPP for the use of our stuff, or can we, or are we going to do the proceeds of crime angle on it, or what's the angle on that?
So maybe Councillor Richardson, if I can start, and then Mr. Dober can correct me if I miss anything or fill in the blanks. It is obviously a partnership between the OPP and the municipality. We were requested to try and work with them because they just didn't simply have the resources necessary to try and kind of get that work done, obviously, and support them. We are, everything that we have spent, we are keeping separate billings for, similar to what we did during COVID. We have separate accounting, so all the accounting is being charged back so we can track those costs. When the charges are laid, they will be cost recovery. We'll work with the OPP to get cost recovery through the courts. So the problem is with some of the lands, depending on whether it's the tenant or the landowner, how the ownership's held, is whether or not we can put certain things on the taxes when we do that. But we do have to kind of go through the courts. There isn't a direct billing mechanism directly to the Ministry of Finance at this point in time. So it's not like we can just take a credit off our policing bill or send the Ministry of Finance. It does have to go through the courts, which obviously can take some time. And as I'm sure council's aware, the courts don't always award full costs, or when they do, a lot of times the people who are charged are such small players that they really don't have any resources to pay that back. So we are mindful of that. We think what the investment is probably when the amount to try and go through property standards, as we've talked about before, it would be enormous, or through our own bylaws to do bylaw enforcement and take this to court would also be an enormous cost to municipality. So we are trying to work with them on that. But what we're going to get back at the end of the day is dependent right now on the courts, unless we can come up working through this with some other agreements. And there is conversations going on we're trying to open up new lines of conversation with the OPP and also with the Ministry of Finance on this, but without regulatory change, we're relying on the courts. Mr. Dauber, I'm not sure if you have any other information on that.
The roads department has been in contact with the finance department. To let us know that they have been in contact with the OPP. The OPP are expecting a bill. We've been working together to work out the machine hour rates and the labor rates. The invoice is being prepared and will be sent to finance for review before it finally goes to the OPP. But the OPP is aware and is expecting a bill to go to them specifically for town employee wages and machine hours for the equipment that was used.
Yeah, that's great. Did they say whether they're going to pay the bill, or are they just going to use the bill with respect to the proceeds of crime legislation?
That I am not aware of, Councillor Richardson. I'll have to get back to you on that. My assumption from the wording was that we might get a check from them or a credit on our bill, but at this point, I can't clarify. I can't say that for sure. So I can find out and get back to you.
Yeah, well, here's open anyways. Thank you.
Yeah, and Councillor Richardson, I do believe that right now the understanding is that it won't be a direct invoice from finance, or it won't be a direct check from finance, that it will be through proceeds of crime or through the courts, through a court order.
Okay, yep, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
I'd like to follow up on that, Councillor Richardson. I'm wondering if we shouldn't, because you make a very good point. I do believe that the right thing was done to supply staff to get rid of these, because we've been fighting them through the courts and it's cost us thousands and thousands of dollars. But what I might suggest is the municipalities, Prince Edward County, Addington Highlands, Stone Mills, Tyndonega Township, that perhaps if we were to put a little bit of pressure on the Minister of Finance or on the OPP to see if we can't show them that how much it costs. Now, again, I'm glad that they did what they did, but it might be a good idea just to remind them as to how much it did cost, and that even though we're happy to do it, it's taxpayers' dollars one way or the other, if you thought that would help by way of motion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just as a piece of additional information is that the superintendent of municipal policing has recently changed. Mark Bedard has moved into a new role, and there's a new gentleman, Superintendent Phil Weller. I might have his last name wrong. There's been recently a reach out from AMO and from the OPP, and I'm hoping to be on a conversation early next week to try and restart some discussions with regard to municipal needs from a staffing perspective with the OPP. We've had a committee that had met for a number of years, and hopefully we can get some online discussions on that. So I might have some more information on how we can reach out to that next week after I have that conference call. And if there is some outreach there or some information on that, I would like to get that back to council at our next meeting if possible.
So what you're recommending, Mr. Calery, is we don't push too hard until you get that information, or are you recommending that we go ahead and just a gentle reminder that as good as the partnership is, it is something that's expensive for all. I'm glad they did it, but I think that we do need to get some kind of either, as Terry says, proceeds of crime or something back, because it is expensive.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to update council. I certainly didn't want to circumvent any policy or anything that council wanted to do directly. I just wanted to let you know that there has been outreach with the OPP and also with AMO to get some staff discussions on all issues or different issues that are affecting municipalities and the policing relationship. And so I'm hoping to have that conversation next week, and I can provide more information if council wishes at our next meeting. So I'm not to affect the recommendation one way or another, but just for information.
Councillor Richardson?
Yeah, if we may get some more information next week, I'm good with waiting till next week, and then we can reassess it after that. It might give us a better indication as to which direction we're going anyway. So,
No, perfect. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Councillor McCormack was next.
I think I just wanted to touch base, Your Worship, on the household hazardous waste event. And I understand it was a real success. However, I'm also told I had some complaints about the lineups all the way down Center Street. So I'm just wondering if this is something that we could address, possibly to have more of these events if need be. And I didn't see it with my own eyes, so I can't really speak to it, but I'm just putting it out there.
Thank you. I actually, for the first time ever, didn't see or get complaints on lengths of line. I think a lot of people, and I'm not saying that it didn't happen because I didn't see it either, but I think if I was to guesstimate at how much one of those days costs us, it's around $60,000. So if we would like to double our budget in it, or triple our budget, we could certainly do it more often. Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Well, the other part of that discussion too is we don't want to inadvertently encourage directing waste to traditional landfill or waste streams that recycling, reusing should be encouraged. And that was one of the reasons to bring the number of events down to a minimum. Some things just simply have to go that way, but we should be encouraging as much as possible waste diversion, and that was part of the logic there.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just as additional piece of information is that I know that our environmental services department has been trying to do a full review since, and it started back in around the time of the pandemic as to what was going into landfill and a real landfill review. But I think what they're working on right now in environmental services is trying to give council an overall picture of all of the things, including everything from green bin to all of the potential issues surrounding environmental services, and bring back a bit more of a master plan. We don't want to wait until this contract's done to be in the position we were before, where we were kind of trying to figure out what the next 10-year contract should look like for environmental services. And obviously, one of the big issues in bringing that plan forward is the changes that have happened recently on the blue box side, as far as what is actually going to be paid for by the producer and what may be paid for by the municipality. At one point, it was 100% producer. Now it's 50% producer. That's kind of creating some variations. But if to council's point, we can certainly make notes to make sure that the whole hazardous waste piece is included in that and not left on the side, that we include that in the overall environmental picture that the department's working on bringing forward. I know they've been doing statistics and a lot of work inside the landfill, trying to do calculations on how long the South Fred site will be available for our use.
Yeah, perfect. So maybe Councillor McCormack, we could make sure that doubling up on that, or whatever they come through with the environmental report to us, that we keep that in mind. I couldn't get over it when I found out how much the cost was, but it's certainly useful. And as I say, this time is probably the first time that I didn't get calls to say, holy mackerel, but I did see lots of people trying to jockey that if they had just 2 or 3 things, trying to get trailers full so that there were less cars there. Anything further from council on the CAO's service area updates? Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Just wanted to bring highlight one piece just for the public's consumption, that under the tax sales, the legislative hold on tax sales has now been lifted. Since February, since March, we have had a legislative hold on all tax sales. I know there's a lot of comments out there about why we're not moving on these 3-year arrears and all that stuff. Well, we've been on hold just like most of the rest of the country and the world for COVID reasons, and now that is over. But it's also interesting to note that the number of 3rd-year registrations is actually down because they were settled through sales in the States and other reasons. So I just wanted to highlight that point in there because I know that's something that we often hear about in social media.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, did you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor, to council. Yes, that's correct, Deputy Mayor Kaiser. The numbers are down slightly, but more importantly, some of the large outstanding amounts are some of the accounts that have settled up. I will be coming back with a report in October, just to update council as directed, and work has begun, and we are moving forward on that. We're having a staff meeting on Monday to do an update and review our processes, and just see how many we're able to do on a weekly basis, and give a good time frame to council as to when we might be wrapped up.
Good, perfect. Thank you so much. If there is nothing further, I need a motion to receive for information the service area update stated September the 22nd, 2020. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor McCormack. If there are no further comments or questions, all in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. CAO, Naturalized Play Spaces Initiative. Mr. Calorie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council had asked for a report on the naturalized play structure at JGNO School. And there's information on this, and really the direction that staff is looking for at this point in time is whether the concept of naturalized play spaces is something that staff or council would like staff to bring forward a policy on based on other things we're working on, or if that is something that you would like just to set on the back burner for a while we work on other projects. So really based on the information, whether council would like a policy developed and brought forward for early 2021, the winter of 2021.
Council's wishes on this. Councillor McCormack.
Your worship, I read the report that the CAO put together, and I appreciate that Wayne Taylor had previous experience and can spearhead something like this, which is a feel-good kind of thing. But I think under the current circumstances with the restrictions that we have financially and all that, Not that we shouldn't be looking at something like this possibly down the road, but I think for now, it might be good just to sort of set this aside and revisit it at a later date.
Thank you. So you're making that by way of motion, would be a motion to put it off for a specified, even, I guess maybe the verbiage could be, even though the policy is certainly appreciated, that it is not something that we want to look at this point in time, but we probably should put a time limit on it, that we would revisit it for when.
Maybe in May 2021.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
I'd second that with the suggestion that maybe we initiate the discussions in mid to late winter in advance of spring work opportunities. The original report from Mr. Taylor was originally supposed to come in February of this year. So I would suggest that February or March of 2021 would maybe be a more appropriate timeline. And if Mr. McCormack is agreeable, I would second that motion.
Absolutely, Deputy Mayor. I support that.
Susan, do you have what you need? Any further comments or questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Financial Services Statement of 2019 Council Remuneration. Motion to receive.
Motion to receive.
Motion to receive, Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor McCormack. Comments or questions? Paul, I see you have popped up there. This is something that would normally come to us in March and has been put off only due to COVID, but it covers the same area of the year 2019.
That's correct. We chose to take the province up on their offer to defer some of the reporting schedule in order to take care of more immediate needs at the time. So now we're coming back, making sure that we're ticking the box for our legislative requirement, and we'll get this report up onto the website as required.
Good, thank you. Any further comments or questions? We do have a motion to receive. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. You have the budget. We have staff recommendation received for information financial services, the 2021 budget schedule. Paul had sent out all kinds of dates and times and so on for us. Deputy Mayor Kaiser, did you have something you wanted to say?
I would. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Delver and the team for being very open and agreeable to work with our schedules and timelines. This is only the second year working with Mr. Delver and seeing a daytime meeting format rather than evenings. I do like it, but I also recognize each of us has our own time limitations, and they've done well to accommodate us all, I think. So I appreciate that. And I move to receive and approve the schedule as presented.
Okay. Seconder? Councillor Johnson? Mr. Dauber, did you miss to make any comment on this before we call the question?
I did, and I just wanted to make sure that the council was aware of one item in there. The first recommendation, in order to accommodate council's schedules as well as staff, I would point out, and I hope I'm not throwing a monkey wrench in this, that the first date proposed is October 27th, which is a council meeting day. So I would ask council to recognize that if you're agreeable to this, that it would make for a long day because we'd be in an all-day session and then back for council in the evening. I think possibly Councillor McCormack might save some time as far as trips into town. But other than that, I just wanted to make sure that that council was aware of that.
Okay, council is aware that that it is that way. And we do have a motion. Did I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Kaiser? And did I have a seconder? I did, Councillor Johnson. Further comments or questions, Deputy Mayor Kaiser?
Just on Mr. Dauber's comment, when we return to live and in-person meetings in October, will we also return to a 7 p.m. start time? Or we've been using 6 o'clock for our special meetings online for the last couple months. So that's just a question there if we're returning to 7.
Yes, regular sessions of council, as per the procedure bylaws, start at 7 o'clock unless otherwise resolved by council.
Okay, that's good to know. It means we have some flexibility in that day if we need it, but it also means we have some time to stretch our legs, run a few laps around the parking lot, whatever, before we sit down for another few hours. Or, hour and a half, whatever a standard council meeting might be,
I'll call a question on this then, please. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. That doesn't mean that the procedural bylaw cannot be changed. And I know that we'd have to discuss as to who it would affect. And I see your head vigorously shaking, but at some point, anyone could bring it up if they wanted to discuss it. Thank you. 5.7, Financial Services 2019 Reserve and Reserve Fund Ending Balances Report. Paul, you're back with us again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the report says, this is a follow-up to the presentation of the financial statements. It's traditional among a number of municipalities to report to council on the ins and the outs of the reserves and the reserve funds. I also wanted to bring a few items to council's attention as a kind of a prelude to the upcoming budget meetings, especially when we talk about council's ability or discretional powers over the reserves and the reserve funds. A little bit of definition there as a reminder. I know council is very aware, but also to point out the amount that the auditors have pointed out the unfunded capital. And that's the third section, and the first section is the reserves. Second section is the reserve funds. And then there's the amount of unfunded capital. So that's basically capital works that have gone through and have not been funded. So the auditors are looking for resolve in this. It's standard to kind of take care of it within a year or two, but I wanted to bring that to council's attention to understand some of the restrictions, to understand some of the pressures that might be coming forward, and that also staff has some recommendations and a plan to go forward with this that will come up at the budget meeting. And actually, we'll be talking about capital at the November section. So staff will come back with some recommendations as to how to deal with the just under $4 million of unfunded capital that's sitting on our book as on our books as a liability. I'd be happy to take any questions council might have.
Any questions directed to Paul on the reserves or the reserve funds? Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
I'm not an accountant or a very good bookkeeper either. So looking at the unfunded capital page, we have amounts here from 2004, 2009, 2013, 16, and 19. So these are showing as liabilities, which means we never really accounted for the cost, but we don't have outstanding bills. They just show as a negative on our books that were never funded. Can you just explain that to me? Pretend I'm an idiot and explain to me a little bit more lay terms how that happens, why it's still sitting there. And I mean, obviously we've paid the bills. Why were they not just written off? I mean, this is 16 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. Thank you.
Sure. Through the mayor. Yeah, that's a very valid question. Unfunded capital comes from a variety of different sources. The most common is unexpected expenses. I certainly can't delve back into 2004 and 2009 and kind of decide exactly what happened. But a likely scenario might have been that these were emergency projects that came up. And the traditional way of dealing with this would be to either use working capital reserves to fund it, or to go out for a debenture for a larger amount. I believe that in the past, the former treasurer had come to the former council with a report, and at that point made a couple of suggestions, which the two most likely scenarios are to pay it out of reserves, or to self-fund it, or to go out for a debenture. So that'll be part of the discussion coming up. It's very unusual for it to be so old. Generally, it gets taken care of in a year or two, and auditors like to see it cleaned up. And when I mean cleaned up, I don't mean written off. What I mean is that there's a finance plan going forward, whether that be debenture, whether that be self-funded, with some form of an internal payback system. And these are all methods that I'll bring to the budget meetings to talk about dealing with this. But it is something that we need to get off the books. If we do a method like debenture, then it stays a liability and moves forward. If we do decide to self-fund it, then it becomes kind of a contra reserve. So it's kind of a negative balance against the other reserves. There are many different ways to handle it, but as I said, it's not usual to have a 16-year-old unfunded capital. It's more common to have 1 and possibly 2 years old, but we will take care of it in the upcoming budget meeting.
If I may, a quick follow-up. So we don't actually have to handle the whole 3.8 as one. We could actually split it off and do some self-funded, some debenture, whatever. We could take some options, whatever we could reasonably afford in certain ways.
There are some options, and there's certainly some pros and cons to each method, and we can sit and take some time and pick it apart. I'll come with some options. I'm not coming empty-handed. I'll be coming with some options for council to pick from, and then we'll get this cleaned up, tidied up, and off the books.
Thank you.
Councillor McCormack?
Through your worship, Paul, Appendix A, could you just explain why we separate Napanee and Greater Napanee in working capital reserves?
I believe that's a historical through the mayor, Councillor McCormack. That's a historical methodology. Before amalgamation, there were separate we call general fund reserves, or sorry, not general fund reserves, general reserves or general capital reserves. And those existed for all the different municipalities. They had been cleaned up, and these are two that are just left over. My suggestion is that we just collapse the two into one reserve, and just kind of finalize and get it done with. That's my suggestion moving forward, and to do that in 2020 before we hit the year-end audit.
Okay.
Any further questions? If not, you have a motion. I need a motion to receive for information on the reserve and reserve funding. Councillor McCormack, seconded by Councillor Norrie. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Financial services, specialized assessment class. I believe this will be Paul and Ray for this report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually going to handle this one. The information had gone out for the new plant that had come online. It came online about the beginning of April. There was two classifications by MPAC as far as how it's assessed. One is the CVA, current value assessment, which is traditional. However, in situations of corporations owned by the province, there's the option of the restricted rate, or the designated rate that's offered through the PIL system. In this, I'm sorry, I'm just switching over to some of my other information. So if I disappear, I'm actually still here. In this, the CVA is what's been valued for what we call the supplemental run, which is the in-year. So that's from April 2020 till the end of December. That would be called the supplemental run. And then it gets into our regular billing cycle after that. The regulated rate comes into play on January 1st, 2021, as far as MPAC is concerned. OPG, its affiliate Achira at this stage, is arguing the supplemental, that it should be at the regulated rate, not the CVA. MPAC had no other methodology other than what they have in their policies and how they move forward with that. So it's the distinction between the regulated rate and the CVA rate that's up for grabs right now, or up in dispute. So at this point, we've reached out, we've tried to come to an agreement, and so far we haven't been able to come to that agreement. MPAC is wanting to get it on their supplemental run. October is their last chance to get it in there. They don't want to leave it and have it come to us in 2021. They'd rather deal with it now. So this report is basically saying what we'd like to do is go ahead, notify MPAC to put it on the sup run with council's permission, to take the amounts that would be paid by OPG for the sup run and top up our assessment appeal reserve, because we have we're fairly certain that there will be a reserve. We want to make sure that we have something put aside so that it doesn't affect the tax rate, sort of a tax stabilization type reserve, which is already in existence, but we want to top it up to an appropriate level that would see us have some money put aside again. So if it should, whichever way it should go, that we're protected as far as our tax rates go. So we're just seeking permission to do that and to reach out to our MPP to get some information and to set up some meetings to try and work the situation out.
Questions from council? Councilor McCormack?
I would just like to move, your worship, that we go ahead with the recommendation.
Okay, the council directs staff to work with all interested parties and take all appropriate action to support the protection of assessment valuations for 2020 and 2021. Secondly, the council directs staff to contribute to the tax assessment appeal reserve from the plant supplemental revenues at an adequate amount to protect the town from an adverse appeal decision. And thirdly, the staff contact MPP Darrell Cramp to establish a meeting to discuss assessment challenges facing the community. Moved by Councillor McCormack, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Pennell?
Through your worship, so they're going to top up with an amount. Do we know what that amount is? Did anyone? I don't see anything here where we have an idea how much it's going to be.
Paul, you should come back up.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Pennell, at this point, we want to go back and do an analysis, but it's going to be at least $400,000. We are looking at a sup run of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 700,000, but we just want to make sure that we're adequately covering for the assessment, but any sort of legal fees that might be attached as well. So whether it's 400, a little bit more than 400, we want to be able to assess to make sure that we have our legal fees covered, and then we'll bring it forward probably in a service area update to council at a future council meeting so that council is aware what that final amount is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I have a mover and a seconder. Any further questions? If not, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Opposed to Councillor Pennell?
No, Madam Mayor, I'm going to need to leave the meeting and try to reconnect. My internet is very unstable.
Okay, I will call a 5-minute recess. Let me just finish this vote. All in favor of that last motion? Carried unanimously. I will call a 5-minute recess to let Councillor Pennell reconnect, please.
I got 5 minutes. Do you want to come and smooch? Oh, I should turn off my mic.
That could be worse than your background, Councillor Johnson. Oh, who has more fun than people?
And we're still live.
Yes, we are. That's the best part.
Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to be using my phone to pair it with my computer. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. I only heard little bits and pieces, and
Okay.
I hope hopefully that we're good. Thank you.
Now we have to wait for the deputy mayor.
I'll send him a text.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, Councillor Richardson needs to come back to, there he is.
Susan, are we still being recorded live?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So we're all back in the room and I'll call it back to order. 5.9, Financial Services Investment Policy. Paul, I think that might be you again.
It would be, Madam Mayor. Thank you. And through you, this is the first step, as the report says, into an investment strategy. This is one of the things that I know that I've been charged with when I started the position. So basically, the purpose for this is to talk about it in an allegorical type way. We're defining the sandbox, how wide, deep, and high the sandbox is, and what the rules and regulations are within that sandbox. Once this is defined, if council is happy with it, then we can go forward and make a plan as that exactly how we're going to play in the sandbox and make it as fun as possible, or in realistic sense to make this as financially viable and fruitful as we possibly can. I'd be happy to answer any questions within it. It is a fairly standard, or I should say some fairly standard wording within it that's accessible, and is certainly in play in a lot of municipalities. I've kept it as short and sweet as possible, and then the final strategy will certainly draw on quite a few more longer play, or I should say longer processes of how we're going to go through to try and make it as good as we possibly can.
Any questions for Paul on the investment strategies, which I'm very much looking forward to, and certainly it was something that council had mandated when Paul came on board with us. If not, you do have the council received for information the Financial Services Investment Policy Report, and further that council adopt the Town of Greater Napanee Investment Policy as presented. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Pennell. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Community and Corporate Services, Canadian Tire Jumpstart Charities Youth Inclusive Play Project. Mr. Zetterberg is not with us this evening because he is ill. So because I've sort of been in on this right from the very beginning, which seems like a long time ago, I'll present as much as I can. First off, this has been going on since 2018 when I was deputy mayor. And it has been kept very hush hush only because the family that was donating the money, who is a local family, wanted it kept quiet until it was ready to be decided and released. So the original plan was perhaps looking at it as a proposal for even a playground within a subdivision. And of course, that was something that absolutely positively would not work. And since then, Mr. Zetterberg and the staff from Jumpstart and our Lindsay T have been working to try and find something that would meet with our initiatives for youth, as well as their initiatives for youth. Jeff Cuthell has been in on this as well and been looking at things that we would have to add to it if it was to go at North Fred. We would have to improve and make the washrooms accessible, improve the parking lot, many things to do, but it's an opportunity that isn't offered to very many municipalities. I also realize that it's something that's tough to throw in front of a council without each and every penny being accounted for. Really, I think this evening, what I would like to do, and I talked to Scott Fraser, who is with Jumpstart. This has carried on for a long time. They would like some sort of a commitment to move forward, to look at it. They're not looking for a check. They're not looking for a commitment that it must go forward. They would like to see it built in 2021. They realize that we have been held up by COVID. They also realize that it would be in stages, and we haven't been able to nail them down to an absolute dollar figure that they may be able to increase it to help us, because they realize that municipalities are up against it. And with that introduction, I'd like to entertain some conversation. I wish that Brant was here to give it all, but I would like to be able to at least get back to Jumpstart and say, we're interested, or say, we may have to pass on it because it's not something that fits in with it. The only other council member that has been in on this conversation, because we had to bounce it off someone, and Councillor Richardson happened to be in the office when Brant and I were talking about the fact that this needed to come forward in September to council. And so if it had been any of you that were in the office, it would have been bounced off you. But it was Councillor Richardson that was there, and we did give him the information on it. Not every dollar and cent, not every twist and turn that we've had in this, but he has had prior knowledge of this. So with that, I would entertain any questions, suggestions, queries, interest, non-interest. Yeah, Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly support continuing the discussions and supporting the project in principle. I know there may be some hesitancy or whatever by picking a spot that's outside of the service portion of town and away from any neighborhoods. North Fred isn't really in walking distance for very many people, if any, a couple maybe. But it is geographically pretty centered within our municipality. And one of the things about using a spot like North Fred is that it already has a basis of development. There are some sports fields there and some playground there. There's a developed parking lot, which obviously would need some further work. But I think it's a good base to build on to maximize the funds that would be put towards this, that we could have a very elaborate and dynamic site by building on what's already there, and rather than starting with a bare greenfield and trying to build everything with the funds available. You know, like I said, it's centered. It's only a couple minutes out of town. Certainly, we see some people bike that far. But also, I think the site, with including the old North Fred Hall that's on site, offers a lot of opportunity potential for us to provide programming for all ages and all sorts of programming out there. I think it's a good site for us to develop. But I certainly support the project in principle, and I want to see the discussions continue with developing costs and plans. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Any further comments? I'll go to Councillor Richardson, and then I'll go to Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to echo the thoughts of the Deputy Mayor. I think maybe more now than any time is a time to invest in our youth and our seniors. And this facility in North Fred, with the added fields and the added courts that we're going to move forward with, is going to do that. I think it shows a commitment to our community that the North Fred Hall is something that's going to be around for a while. And with all due respect, I remember when I was a kid, I'd ride down Little Creek Street to the only ball diamond we had down there was at H.H. Langford. And we've come a long way in the last 40 years. And, you know, as far as the location, I do think it's a good location. It is central. And we have to keep in mind that as our community grows, we're growing towards that. But it has everything that we need out there. It's got the soccer pitches, it has the ball diamonds, it's got the hall, it's got everything. And with a little bit of money and a little bit of freshening up, I think it can be a state-of-the-art facility for our youth and for our seniors, which is very important. So I'd be very supportive of moving forward with it, at least with the conversations for sure. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Pennell?
Thank you, Worship. So if I'm reading the numbers right, we're looking at somewhere that Jumpstart would be donating somewhere around $300,000 to the project.
Sorry, at this point, that is the figure, but they have different times mentioned that it might go higher.
Okay, because I just look at what the budget numbers are and what we would be left of, somewhere between 280 and 141,000, depending. I'm hoping that that's just the concept design, or is that the design are going to be, because that's basically, I'm looking at a bunch of basketball nets, places for people to play basketball. I'm just wondering if that was just a concept drawing, or is this what it's going to be if we go forward?
I don't know whether this is in color on the your agenda. Is it in color on your agenda?
Yeah.
And they're looking at the fact that it could be an area that would have pickleball and different things. I can certainly get you a better look at it. This has been over 2 or 3 times to try and include as much as we could, with still respecting the fact that we do need to have areas that can be lit at night, but also shaded, and some seating areas. They had looked at a lot more seating areas, and with COVID and with physical distancing that's going to be with us for a long time, I'm sure that there are some things there that would have to be looked at. You know, the sensory area is trying to look to all different disabilities and so on too, as to what they could use. It would be fenced. And then of course, there's nothing to do with naming rights, because it would be the huge Jumpstart. There has been some discussion as to the actual surface itself, but that'll be straightened out between our capital works people, and there is a lot of preparation that we can do as well. So This doesn't have to be the absolute final, but every time we add something, Councillor Pinell, it costs a little bit more, and they really want to make it as inclusive for use as they can. Does that help?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor McCormack.
I just wanted to say that something like this would certainly be a benefit to the town. It would be a draw for families when they're considering relocating, and we're already being well received by families, but this in addition would certainly be an added bonus. And I don't want to knock the pool, but with the recent announcement that we didn't get the funding grant that we were hoping for the pool, in the interim anyways, something like this I think is a very good program.
Thank you. And I think that's why we respected the location too. And one of the other reasons that we have sort of sat on this, because we did want to see what was happening with the pool. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's really exciting that we have somebody who is willing to contribute this much of the portion of the cost to our community and to invest in both our youth and our seniors. And the fact that we have a building that's there which can serve as a base is certainly key to that. I'm wondering if, and I don't want to add costs on top of this, but in order to make it accessible for all, if at some point someone can consider some sort of transportation to and from. But that could be something that could be added later.
Yeah, it certainly could be a spin-off that might be, with, and I don't know what's going to happen to SOS and seniors outreach and so on, but certainly the small buses and so on that they're started to put on could be something that could be added to it too. Councillor McCormack.
Just one added note is, Your Worship, is the program that we've handed over to the YMCA. So in conjunction, I mean, this certainly would, I think, help draw additional participation if we had this kind of a venue at the location.
Oh, for sure. No, we haven't shown it to them, but they certainly are aware that there could be something that's pretty spectacular going down there. And Jumpstart themselves are very happy that it is going in sort of an intergenerational area that would be supplying a lot of different things. I'm not going to say remote, but something that wasn't smack in the middle of town, something that would be good there for everyone. So I think what I'm hearing here, unless anyone else has any questions, is that we do have a recommendation that council receive for information, community and corporate services, the Canadian Tire Jumpstart Charities, Youth Inclusive Play Project, and further that council consider the approval of the Jumpstart project in principle and the implications of the long-term investment in the rural North Fredericksburg Sports Complex and Community Hall. And further that council direct staff to continue discussions with Jumpstart and bring forward a complete estimate of immediate and future costs during the 2021 financial year budget process. Do I have a mover for that? Deputy Mayor Kaiser, Councillor McCormack. And I think to be aware too, it was nice that when Jeff Cuthell was sitting in on this, there were so many things that we could find that were cost efficient, because so much of it we could do ourselves. And of course, Jeff very concerned too on the maintenance, the future maintenance of it. I mean, it's good to put it out there, but we have to think of the costs of it. So thank you. And I'm sure they'll come down and do a presentation. They still won't release the name of the family, but they will come down and do a presentation for us so that you can see what the final schematics are. And I'll call the question on that. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Okay, carried unanimously. Thank you. Community and Corporate Services, dog license fee proposed increase and pound services. Susan, are you speaking to this?
Yes, Your Worship, I can answer any questions if council has them.
Okay, any questions of Susan with the information that's before us for the dog license and pound service report? If not, you have, Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
On the third recommendation, it says that the per day boarding rate remain until a financial review. I wouldn't want to see it just based on cost. I mean, as much as that may sound counterintuitive, I also wouldn't want to see it be, there are other service providers out there that provide boarding. And so I would want to make sure that we were competitive, fair, but without being cutting, if you will. So I think the going rate, if you will, should be also considered in that point, not just cost recovery, if that makes sense. At least have the information in there to see what's a going rate.
Yes, so moving forward with the review, we would be looking at other municipalities and what their rates are. So these are for animals that are picked up running at large. And we would be doing a comparator with similar sized municipalities to determine that our rates are fair.
Good enough, thank you.
So you have a recommendation before you, Council, your wishes. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Pennell. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. BIA Board of Management minutes for July and August of 2020. You have a recommendation that Council receive and adopt the following BIA Board of Management minutes from meetings held July 22nd, July 29th, August 5th, August 12th, August 19th, and August 26th. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. Comments or questions? Yeah, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I have a question. When I was reading the minutes, there was a couple of different dates for the AGM, and I'm just wondering if they have had their AGM yet, or if there is a firm date for that.
Yep, I'll let Councillor Norrie answer that.
We had it last Thursday, and we're having a second one in October for finances. But we had one with a reasonable turnout, and those minutes will be coming, I guess, to our next council meeting. And then again, like I said, a second AGM in late October.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I received notice of these meetings. It could be because of property. The rest of council doesn't receive notice of BIA meetings. Are you interested in receiving them? And knowing what's going on and keeping up on stuff?
Madam Mayor, for
Yes.
myself, I would be interested in the AGM for sure. And if we did have notices of the meeting, and then if we could attend it or something, then maybe that would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just something I'd definitely be interested in the AGM. And is it common to have 2 AGMs a year?
I'll let you answer that, Councillor Norrie.
No, but we have a brand new board and they had just started with a new full-time staff, and some financial questions came up that could not be answered. So the decision was made to have a second one, and then I'll be able to pick Mr. Dauber's brain before it or have him attend. And so we just want to get all the answers out there. So after the COVID and the down of a lot of businesses, there's a lot of scary times still. So they're just trying to do their best to get as much information out as they can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
So I have a mover and a seconder. Susan, have we voted on this?
No, not yet.
Yeah, just before that too, and I want to make special mention of all these people that have tried to keep the BIA Board of Management going. It really has been extremely tough for them. Been a lot of ups and downs, and I must say that Councillor Norrie, as their council rep, has been by them the whole way, whereas the rest of us really haven't had as many duties with our committees I think it's been nonstop, and I think these people that have stayed with it, some of them after getting through the toughest part, as you will see later on, have stepped back, but without them, we wouldn't have gotten this far. So, you know, good on the BIA for going forward. It's not a smooth ride, but they're getting there. All in favor of the motion for the approval? Yep, carried unanimously. Androni, resignation from the Municipal Heritage Committee. Of a recommendation that council receive with regret the correspondence from dated September the 9th, resigning from the Municipal Heritage Committee, and further that council direct that a letter be sent to Mr. Androni from the mayor, thanking him for his contribution to the committee. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor McCormack. Comments or questions? Councillor Richardson?
Yeah, just briefly, Your Worship, I personally would like to thank Erm for his contribution to the Heritage Committee. His knowledge of the community and the history of the town was invaluable to the committee at a time when it was really needed. When we started up fresh after a vacation, so to speak, of the Heritage community. So I'd just like to wish Erm well in his retirement. Thank him for his contribution to the committee, and all the best.
Good. Thank you very much, Councillor Richardson. All in favor of the.
Sorry, Your Worship,
Yeah.
a question. Do we need to consider replacing Erm, and what's the process or what's the requirement there?
Susan?
So this committee has, I believe now about 12 members. So we are okay for members at this point. So we have a meeting scheduled for towards the end of October, and we'll be looking at whether the committee would recommend bringing something to council for advertising for more members.
Okay,
Excellent. That's what I needed to ask. Thank you.
thank you. Have I called the question on this one? No. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Terry Johnson, resignation from the BIA Board of Directors. Recommendation that council receive with regret the correspondence from Terry Johnson dated September the 16th, resigning from the BIA Board of Directors, and further the council direct the mayor to send a letter to Mr. Johnson thanking him for his community service to the BIA. Moved by Councillor McCormack, seconded by Councillor Norrie. There's another person that made it through the toughest part, can build anything. They're going to miss his building prowess and the fact that he can move 1,000,000 miles an hour, except when his wife tells him to. All in favor of the, oh, sorry, Councillor Norrie?
Just quickly, yes, but he's still gonna be boots to the ground. He'll be there helping put up lights and various things. He's not giving it up. He's just giving up the politics. That's all.
Yep. Here, here. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Rob Hendrick, resignation from the BIA Board of Directors. You have a recommendation that council receive with regret the correspondence from Rob Hendrick dated September the 16th, resigning from the BIA Board of Directors, and further that council direct the mayor to send a letter to Mr. Hendrick thanking him for his community service to the BIA. Mr. Norrie, I assume that this is the same thing, that he will, certainly Rob will be around again. He's been one of those dependable members that's been around for a long time.
Correct. He still wants to help out.
Yeah, good. All righty. So moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Lennox and Addington Autism Awareness Network request for proclamation of Lighted Up Blue campaign for Autism Awareness Month, October 2020. You have a recommendation that council proclaim the month of October 2020 as Autism Awareness Month in the town of Greater Napanee, and further that council directs staff to work with the Lennox and Addington Autism Network to determine where blue lights can be installed for a Light It Up campaign, blue campaign. Moved by Councillor McCormack, seconded by Councillor Johnson. I know that staff is going to work to see what we can do. And I also know that I think that, if I'm not mistaken, the lights at Springside can be set to blue. And I mean, we are putting lights up right now if there happen to be some blue, but I think it's something, because we are being asked for proclamations. We're not doing flag policy. You know, there are so many good LED lights that can be, we could have them at the SPC, we could have them many places that would help with these proclamations and help with our town hall, many other places. And I think it's something that we should maybe look at for the budget next year, just to see if there's something that we can help with making people aware of these different things that go on. Because as you'll see in the next one, we've got, it is just one day, but, or it is maybe just a couple of days, but they'd like it to be red. So we're going to have red and blue up there in the same time period. Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering, at the SPC, we have that light up board out by the road at Jim Kimmett. Is there an opportunity to use that as a rotating message to include the fact that the Lighted Up Blue campaign for the autism awareness for the month of October, is that an opportunity we have just to use that board?
Yeah, I think
for future such things.
Yeah, and not only that, but maybe some of the TVs that we have inside, because we do have all the TVs inside the different buildings too. So not that everybody's going in the building, so that would be a good idea. But I think,
just because I think it would further explain why the lights at the water at the falls are blue, and people could see that and better understand. It's not just that there's a blue light. Hey, isn't that neat? They lit up the waterfalls blue for the month of October. Here's why. It's on the information screens where we have them. I think that's an appropriate idea there.
I think it would be. I think it would be good, but I would still like to look for a good constant way that we can use them. That we would be able to do this. So you do have a recommendation before you, Council. Your wishes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor Pennell. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Trish Griffin requests that the town participate in Dyslexia Canada's 3rd annual Market Red for Dyslexia campaign. You have a recommendation that council receive for information the correspondence from Trish Griffin dated September the 15th, requesting that the town of Greater Napanee consider participating in Dyslexia Canada's 3rd annual Market Red for Dyslexia campaign by lighting up a public building or monument in red for one night during the month of October in support of 20 to 15% of Canadians living with dyslexia, and further that council provide direction regarding this request. And I am absolutely positive that our whizzes within facilities and so on can do something like that. Councillor Richardson, motion to support? Yeah, okay, seconded by Councillor Pennell, with direction to staff to make sure that they can do something for them, and to contact Trish to let her know just where and when that will be. Okay, I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Statements by members. Yeah, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure if this is the right time to just talk about COVID testing or not, but I've been receiving some complaints from residents in regards to the drive-through facility, and I'm sure that others have been receiving complaints as well. One particular resident, her son was sent home from work, and on the 15th, they tried leaving voicemails on the 15th, 16th, and 17th. And then on the 19th, they tried to leave another voicemail to set up an appointment, but the message had changed that you could not leave a voicemail message anymore. And then on September the 20th, they received a phone call setting their appointment to the 22nd. So that was like 8 days for that. Then he's going to do his testing, and then whatever time that he needs to wait from that. The reason I bring this up, the time frames, is that this particular person was sent home from work, and now for 8 days he doesn't get paid. With the drive-through testing, back in the early days, we could see long lineups, lots of cars, lots of people there. And now that they've gone to an appointment system, I can understand that the lineups aren't as long, because they're saying, most likely they're saying that between a certain block of time, there's going to be so many appointments, so there's no need for lots of people there. What the issue is that I see is the perception. There's a lot of people that are trying to get tested right now. And if people drive by the drive-through center and they see that there's only a few cars, that adds to the frustrations. I know that Kingston at the Leon Center, it books up really fast. I was listening to CBC radio. Again, I say this to everybody. There's two things you can fault me for. One is for listening to CBC radio, and the other is actually believing it. But in Ottawa, they opened their facility, and within 19 minutes, they had the limit of what they could do. So I know that there is a big demand for getting tested and stuff, but I'm just wondering if we could write off to KFL&A, and I know that this particular resident had reached out to Daryl Cramp's office, and they had responded very fast. But like most things, it's giving advice to try things, but it didn't work out. But I'm just wondering, if somebody is sent home from work, if there cannot be a fast track system where if this person is going to be without pay for 8 days and then plus whatever happens for the time of testing, I'm just wondering if we could come up with some way where the employer gives a slip and says, I need you tested. And I understand that everybody has the right to be tested, but to be without pay for that time really hurts financially. And that's all I need to say about that.
Yeah, Councillor McCormack.
Your worship, it seems to me early on when we spoke about testing centers, had you not mentioned there was talk about having a mobile unit to go to different locations? Was that something not discussed early on?
It was, Councillor McCormack, and it really the mobile units were meant to go to the more rural areas, and they haven't been rolled out, so that people that live in areas such as Addington Highlands, even the north part of Stone Mills and so on, that they would be able to roll those into different locations, and it just has not come to fruition. What I can do, and of course this was on our meeting on Monday, because my phone lights up too, and I have 2 grandchildren right now that are waiting for appointments because they can't go to school. The schools have sent them home. So right now it's just capacity for human bodies on the ground to do it. What they're trying to do is they're looking at different ways. They are now looking at using one of our facilities that would be a better drive-through. Even though, and it could be North Fred, and it could be the SPC, which of course we've always held open for them to be able to do it, to put more people through. With the construction that's going on at Lenadco, and with them lining up in an area that emergency vehicles need to be able to get through and so on, it just isn't working. I will see if I can find out any more information as to their view to how they're speeding it up, because Mr. Ford is certainly saying that we need to be at such a huge capacity. Well, that's not just Toronto. It's not the GTA. It needs to be, it's not just Windsor. We all need to have that capacity. And the testing really is done here by our hospital, but monitored by KFL&A. Both of them have worked their batoots off to try and keep things going straight. This for them is probably the first blip that they've had with the demand. And I think a lot of it with kids having to go back to school so quickly. So I will look into it and see if I can get some more answers. I did phone Dr. Morrison on Sunday, and she just said, you just have to keep trying it. Now, I know people that phoned today to get, finally got a call back today from leaving messages, and they're in for, I think, day after tomorrow or the next. But that's a good point, Councillor Pennell. Missing work, missing school. Kids missing school will make parents have to miss work because there's no childcare. Daycare centers are the same thing. So it's another one of those things that, as I keep saying to you, we haven't had a rehearsal for this, and we're far from out of the woods with this. Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. On this point, I think it's appropriate for us to, when we have the opportunity, to politely maintain pressure on the KFL&A Public Health. I know that the county of Frontenac does not actually have any testing within their county. They rely on people going to the city. We were fortunate that we have a hospital here that could do some testing, but still, as you said, it was in partnership with public health. Public health actually didn't provide any of the testing in our community. It was our hospital that did it under their supervision. So I just think that we should maintain that pressure on our public health body, that they not forget Lennox and Addington or Frontenac County for the same point, but let's stick to our own for now and say Lennox and Addington County has to be better served by public health in this regard. And if that means supporting our hospital, and I know our hospital has had a history of cooperation with Queen's University for educating doctors and the like. Well, there's also a nursing program at Queen's too. I think there's some opportunity there for some of those students to maybe get some in-field stuff as they get into their later years. And maybe that's an opportunity of partnership too, but the health unit needs to support us more directly in providing that testing, because obviously as more doctors' offices return to more normal practice and such, the number of bodies available at our hospital are decreasing, and we need support from the health unit just as much as the city of Kingston gets or more. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, and so would you want something then taken forward? Because of course, even though we help fund it through the county, do you want to take something through the county council tomorrow night that it would come from county council, or do you want to see something come from this body of governance?
If you're asking me, or if I'm just going to take the floor first, I would say that we could maybe ask the county to take it forward. The county does. It is the county hospital, so it's more appropriate coming from the county, but we could preemptively offer support for the county to seek more support for the hospital from health unit. Is that the way, is that maybe appropriate way to do that?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And if you want that as way of motion, I would do that or second it if anybody else wanted it.
If you want to move that, and if I can get a seconder, then that letter should go
Done.
out and go to county council tomorrow night.
Done.
So there's no hurry. Okay, so it was moved by Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor Pennell, that we send a letter to county council, a letter to KFL&A, or a letter to county council.
I would ask that we send a letter to county preemptively offering support for any pressure they'd like to push towards public health, KFL&A Public Health, to offer more support for testing within our county hospital.
Okay.
And I can write that down so I remember to bring that up tomorrow night if you want.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make another comment. I just went through the system myself and found the experience to be very similar as what Councillor Purnell was talking about. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait 8 days, but because I'm an impatient person, I also called Prince Edward County, and I called Campbellford, where they have, those are our next two closest testing centers, and their systems are running the same way. Currently, the only place where you can walk on is the Leon Center. And I don't know if the easiest way to help process more of the calls is just to have more bodies on the telephone. I certainly wouldn't want unqualified people doing the testing or processing the testing. And I know they're working as quickly as they can to protest the tests. But it's perhaps that's a way where the health unit could help, just by having people make the phone calls and do the follow-up so that we can get more people through the lines.
Okay, thank you. So I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Anything further in statements by members? Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
I have two items that we really wanted to bring up, and since we don't have new business, old business, other business, whatever. Recently, we had two bylaws go through this council, which had the right intention and had the right purpose in mind, but I think we overlooked a couple of things, and I'm wondering about a process to, I'm not asking to review them at this time, but I want to make sure that we review them in a timely fashion, and I'm going to point them out right now. First one is outdoor growing of cannabis, and I know it just came into everybody's mind when I said the outdoor growing of cannabis, and I don't think any one of you thought about growing hemp on a farm scale for fiber or for CBD. And when I say hemp, I mean cultivars that have a guarantee of less than 0.3 THCs, but because they are considered cannabis, they're covered under Health Canada's cannabis laws, and therefore they're covered by our bylaw. And we just banned outdoor growing of cannabis. So we have growers in this county who are interested in growing, in this municipality who are interested in growing and working on permits and processes to do so. And we just kind of cut them off at the start. And so I think that's something that was an unintended consequence, and we should maybe be reviewing that. And I have been discussing that with some of our staff about we need to look at going forward. The other one that came up very recently was the wildlife feeding bylaw. And again, I agree with the intent of that bylaw at the time we put it in, but we also failed to consider that there are many residents across this municipality in the rural portions who feed deer and ducks and whatnot. And I don't think the bylaw is appropriate to be enforced upon some of those practices and activities. But because of the way we worded it, we swept them all in. So I think at some point in the near future, we should maybe reconsider that and make sure we're capturing the intended with unintentionally capturing the unintended. And I'm going to leave that alone for now, and maybe we'll see a process come forward to do that.
So you're just making that by way of statement. You don't want to move it.
Yep. I don't want to move it at this time, but because I've sort of got a ball started with the cannabis. Yep. And so we're looking at how wording can be done on that one, I think, and making sure we capture it right. But the wild feeding one, I think, is the other one that we need to have a better discussion on, that we're making. There's a lot of people who do it. It's a normal practice to feed the deer. It's one of those loopholes. You can't bait game in season, but you can feed them the rest of the year, and you teach a habit of behavior, but it's still appropriate in some of those settings. While I agree with why the bylaw came forward at the time and what we were trying to capture by it, we unintentionally captured some practices that I don't agree we should have. I'll leave that for now, and we'll consider taking that up in the near future. Thank you.
Anything further from council in statements by members? I don't think we can let this weekend pass without thanking the many participants and certainly the organizers for a virtual Terry Fox run. Walk, one day your way. And I think they raised, I think the last count that I saw, it was certainly close to $9,000. 40th year of the Terry Fox run. Pretty good stuff in Greater Napanee area. Lennox and Addington has always been such a good supporter, so good on them. I also want to comment on the fact that our emergency services, our firefighters were able to have the tanker shuttle accreditation, which they had been practicing for. And on Saturday, if you saw trucks driving around and around and around, that's what they were doing. So good on the fire department again for getting that accreditation, which I guess means something to us as far as insurance, but more than that, it means good protection through suppression. So it's not quite as easy as it seems, and good for them for doing it. So if that is all we have from council, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. Moved by Councillor McCormack, seconded by Councillor Pennell. All in favor of that motion? Oh, I maybe have to announce what we're going into closed session for. Sorry. For the adoption, resolve itself into closed session, adoption of the closed session minutes from September the 8th, 2020 and September the 18th, 2020 meetings. Discuss commercial and financial information supplied in confidence to the municipality, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of an organization. And lastly, to discuss personnel matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees. So I have that moved and seconded. Yes, all in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. We will see you shortly, council. Thank you.